Welcome to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Welcome to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nallely Suarez Gass, and today with me is Araceli Garza. Welcome.
Thank you, Nallely. So glad to be here.
So for those of you who don't know Araceli, she has had probably one of the most interesting lives. And when I say interesting, I don't mean easy. Like, it's probably really hard doing everything that you did. And I know I can't describe it to its fullest. She is an architect, but not just like a regular architect. So tell us a little bit about like how you started, where you're from, and more importantly, as you could see from her shirt, Columbia University. Tell us about your academic.
Yes. So grew up, born in Little Village, grew up there. And at the age of 9, we moved to Mexico. I was really close to my grandparents, and my grandparents decided to retire in Mexico, especially my grandmother. They had come to the States. My grandfather came here through the Bracero program, and then he was able to bring his whole family. So my mom and my uncle, their nuclear family, were brought here as toddlers, basically, and they grew up here. But my grandmother always wanted to raise her children in Mexico. So we became her children to take back home. So go to Mexico, 9 years old, don't know much Spanish.
How long did you think you'd be there?
I thought I'd be there for a year because I didn't know the language. And I remember being that first day of school, 4th grade, I was pulled back a year. And they gave us a test, and I walk up to the teacher, and I'm like, I couldn't even communicate with her. Like, didn't anybody tell you that I don't know any Spanish? Like, I can't even read it. And I remember getting a 0 on that exam, like my first 0, because I was in, honor roll here, perfect attendance, and was, doing well in school. So getting that 0, I was like, oh my God, what is this? I'm not a 0. And over there, the system is so differently, right? It's, it's graded from 0 to 10, 10 being the best and 0. So learning a new language in a new environment without my mom, because my parents stayed here in Chicago, that was probably like, it was it was a little bit shattering, but having my grandparents there and their support and just knowing that they were the ones believing in us was beautiful. Moved there with my sister, who's 3 years younger than I am.
We always talk about kids being like resilient and learning quickly. How long did it take you to feel like you knew Spanish?
It was a matter of months. Because by the end of that year, I was
now nada nos entra. I can't learn a new language.
Exactly. But it was wonderful, right? And I made new friends. And what I remember the most about this school is that it was so open. Everything was outdoors. So we had the classrooms, and you open the door and you're outside.
Yeah.
And it was always springtime. I grew up in San Luis Potosí. So, the median temperature is beautiful year round. That's why my grandparents decided to move there and retire there. And so I said, when it was time to come back, I was like, well, let me finish grammar school.
Yeah, I'm not ready.
I'm not ready. Let me just sexto grado, right? 6th grade comes along, and I'm like, okay, no, not yet. Now
all my friends are going to la prepa.
Yeah, la secundaria.
Yeah. Right? Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so did that. And then la prepa, and then did that. And then my grandmother got really sick. And that's when we came home. We came back to Chicago and was here that summer. And she had stage 4 cancer, so there was just a matter of time trying to make her comfortable. And then she was gone. And she was, I was like, now what? And I remember going through, so my mom is trying to figure out, what to do with two teenage girls,
Yeah.
basically. Do they go back home? My grandfather is like mourning his own way. And I was on a bus on Fullerton. Um, we lived near Logan Square and was on a bus on Fullerton heading to go see my grandmother. And I see, one of those bus ads that says Wright College. And I was like, I'm going to go, check it out, what Wright College is all about.
Yeah.
Walk into Wright College and I enrolled myself, unbeknown to my mom of what to do. Because she's like, I don't know. I'm the first one to ever even consider going to college.
I
So,
love that you went to Wright College. And for those of you who don't know what Wright College is, it's a community college in the
right.
city of Chicago. I went there too. I took some of my classes that I thought were like I was already going to UIC, but I wanted classes like I wanted to catch up and do faster, and only because I changed my major so many times that I was like, oh no, I'm behind now. And so I would go to Wright College like on evenings or during the summer
Yeah,
to catch up.
to catch
Yeah.
up. And to me, Wright College, it was the new experience because now I come back and now I don't know English. I don't know English at a college level, right? So I think if I recall, we tried to go to UIC, but they're like, well, your English scores are too low. You have to, do ESL basically, right?
So when I was starting UIC, I took the placement exam, and I had just spent like a month and a half in Mexico because that's where your parents ship you for the summers. And I remember telling them like, give me 1 week. Give me 1 week and let me retest because I just got off a plane from Mexico and I need to switch my English brain
Yes,
back
switch your
on.
brain.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I did test again, and then I
And then it
had
was,
they were like, okay.
yeah, isn't that amazing how your brain works,
That also
right? The
tells
whole
you like
switching.
the time, right? Like think
Yeah,
about that. Back in that day, I could be
yeah.
like, no, please, let me take the test again. I don't know if they would do that these days.
Right, right. No, you got to wait till next year
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole system there in place. Well, started with,
Mhm.
English, like, I don't know, 90. Um, and, but I already knew I wanted to study architecture. Like that has always been my calling almost. So even at Wright College, I started taking the drafting courses or the architectural history, whatever I could take that would keep me in that field.
Yeah.
Because now I was in this new world and didn't quite know how to navigate it. But again, right, I learned it quickly. Writing and taking my English courses was an outlet almost for me because we had to do a lot of writing, right, to improve yourself. And that became beautiful to write about my experience of coming back and what I was going through,
Right. Or even the experience of like leaving
leaving.
and coming back. So I'm going to ask you a little bit
Yeah.
about that because I know we're going to go into like all your education, but like, we always say La India Maria, right? Ni de aquí ni de allá, but you are de aquí y de allá.
Yes.
And is there one place you feel more at home, or do you think you've like mastered it?
Whew, that's a tough
I
one.
know.
That's a tough one because I embrace being bicultural, like truly bicultural and truly understanding both sides of the
Mhm.
fence, so to speak, right? And even though now I've been here longer than what I lived in Mexico, those were my formative years,
Yeah.
right? Then those were the ones where you set roots, and that has always pulled me back. So I carry that with me all the time in my work, in my daily life, right? It's hard to separate, but certainly I am also Mexican American and I wear that proudly too.
Yeah.
And I embrace that and I
Dual citizenship?
understand. I'm working. I had it, and then, at 18, we came back. I had
you have
to
to
give
pick
it up.
one. Yeah, back
Right.
then you
Yeah.
had to
Pick
choose. You
one.
could not be both.
You
Now you
cannot
can
be
be both.
both. Yes, I had to choose.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that and the whole passport thing and stuff. So
You're gonna be like
hopefully
Jason Bourne,
soon.
show up with like 4 passports.
Which one am I going to use today? Yeah.
Okay, so you start right college, you're doing all the architecture
Yeah.
classes, and then what do you do?
And then I couldn't find my space here. I couldn't find my spot here. And I was longing to go back to Mexico. So, in talking with one of the counselors at Wright College, and I attribute to him pretty much the person who laid a foundation on me. I said, I need to go back. And these are the different universities that I'd like to go back to. So how can I get myself back there? At this point, I had been at Wright College maybe about a year and a half. I was acing everything. Oh my God, the first time I got a notice that I was on the dean's list, I thought it was a bad thing. I go
You're like, I don't
home.
want to be on his list.
I don't want to be on his list. Who is this person? I did something wrong. And I tell my mom, and she's like, no, it's a good thing. I said, but what does
Yeah,
it
can
mean?
they just call it honor roll like everyone else?
The dean's list. So I was like, okay, so it's a good thing. She's like, yes, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And, getting really good grades. And he said, well, why do you want to go back? And I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't like the weather. The people are different. The school is all closed. And this was at the old college campus of Wright.
yeah,
so it
yeah.
was still like very
It was like a high school. It's a high school now, yeah.
It's a high school. And it's cold. It's
My
cold.
nephew
right?
goes there, or he did. He graduated already.
Yeah, and it's cold. It's just cold. The building is cold. The environment was cold, and I said, I miss my Mexico.
On this outside.
So he's like, all right, we started to meet, right? Like once a week, trying to make up a plan of how that was going to transition back. And he's like, Araceli, what if I were to tell you that I can give you a scholarship to stay here and finish your associates?
Okay, I'm listening. I'm
the first one to go to college of my family, so I'm the oldest of four. And to me, like, the cost of any college, right,
was crazy.
was crazy to my family, even though it was a city college, right? It just put a strain on everybody. And I was like, well, what do you mean a scholarship? He's like, we'll give you a full tuition scholarship if you stay.
Whoa.
And I applied to it. And he's like, just finish here, complete an associate's, and we'll figure out how to get you to the next school. And so I stayed. That's how I stayed. I think otherwise I probably would have returned to Mexico and become an architect over there, but it would have been very different.
Right.
So graduated from Wright College, and he helped me figure out how to go to IIT,
Which is an amazing school.
It's the Illinois Institute of Technology, right? It is a great architecture school. However, at this point, I already had 3 years at a city college, right? Because remember, I had to kind of work my way up through that English every semester, every summer. And I was going to school, all year round.
It was my full-time job.
Yes, it was. It was. I had some part-time jobs here and there, but it was my focus.
What were some of your part-time jobs?
Okay. I worked in the Brickyard Mall. That was close to my house.
At a store, at a
You know, I worked for the mall.
Oh.
My very first job was as a Santa's helper, as an elf. And they had us wear these, like, the ears, the hat and everything. And we took pictures of the kids, the crying kids, and, would open up the mall and close up the mall. Open and close, count the money. Everything was cash back then. Print out the pictures, give them to the parents and stuff. But it was a fun job because everybody was, kind of high school, college and stuff. So that was like my first job. And then the mall decided to keep me, and then I became like a customer service rep. So if you needed, I don't know, new coupons or
Where's the
wrapping or where's the
bathroom?
bathroom
Yeah.
or strollers, because back
Oh
then you
yeah,
would
they
rent
rented
the
the strollers. Yep, I love
Yes.
those.
Yes. So that's what I did. That was my very first job at the Brickyard Mall.
And now we're setting our eyes on
And
IIT. And I think it's
IIT.
important, right? Like I used to waitress and I used to do like every single job. And like you think about like all the different jobs and it's like if you saw a Santa's helper, if you saw an elf at the mall, would you think that person's about to go to IIT
Right.
to work on architecture? Like I want the vision of like you can dream big even if you're like holding crying babies, taking their pictures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that just seemed like such a dream. Like, oh my God, I'm going to a real university now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, with the help of this counselor, was able to obtain a big scholarship to enter there.
Amazing.
Right? I would say about 80% of my tuition was covered
Wow.
there. And even though I was a transfer student at IIT, the program is a 5-year program. They only counted 1 year. So my 3 years only became one
So
year.
you've now lost a year when you went to Mexico,
Right.
a year when you came back, and now you're
No.
going to lose 2 years.
2 years.
Okay.
Yes, yes. And you know,
Did you think like this is ridiculous?
oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. Of course I would think that. I was like, why?
Yeah,
Right?
me hubieran dicho.
But even though they credited a lot of my transfer credits, it was this idea that we need to shape you as an IIT grad, right? To really understand and immerse yourself into it. So I had a lot of electives because a lot of my previous credits and classes were transferred, just the architecture ones were not. So I had a lot of opportunities to choose other electives and explore within the college there. And on top of that, because of the scholarships, I was able to live on campus.
Nice.
And that was, even though it's in the south side of Chicago, my house was on the north side of Chicago. It was like, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It was my first time living on my own.
How old were you by this time?
I was probably like 21.
Okay.
Yeah, 21 when I transferred there. And
You know what? The first time I lived on my own, I was 21 too.
yeah,
Yeah, because before then my parents were like, "Oh no."
no,
No.
no. And I don't
And even
think I even
then-
asked.
Yeah, even then when I moved out, yeah, my dad was like, "No te doy permiso." I was like, I'm not asking you.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
I even like said,
Gotta go.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going.
Yeah.
It was like this, it's made up, right?
Yeah.
And being in architecture school, because back then it was all hand drawn, right? It was ink on mylar. It was, you had to be in studio all the time. So leaving studio at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive back home or something like that, it just wouldn't.
It wouldn't
never
have been safe
Yeah.
either.
Right. So spent there 4 years, did a study abroad program.
Where?
You know, I studied in Italy, in Tuscany. It was beautiful, wonderful. And then from there, we would travel all over Italy, Europe, backpacking, staying in hostels.
I love that.
It's such a great experience, I think, for any
I think
college
everybody
student
needs to
who
do it.
needs to go.
I went to
see.
Vienna and I studied abroad over there. And it was just so interesting because one, I did not speak German. And I got there and I was like, I don't know how to ask for water. Like, I don't know how to buy anything here. I don't know. And, you know, back then I had my American Express traveler's checks. Because there was no, like,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
we may have had an ATM card. I can't remember. Yeah, I would have had an ATM card, right? Yeah, we would have had one. But it was just such an interesting like experience to be over there,
Yeah.
and it just made the world feel so much more connected.
Yes, yes. And just to learn how other people live and how they see the world. And it just really opens your own horizons of understanding that it's not just here, it's not just Chicago, it's so much bigger than you,
Right.
right? So graduating from there from IIT, went on to work, was working at
As
a
an
small
architect?
firm as an architect. During college, I had some internships. I was a
How did
model
you
maker
how did you find them?
through other friends there
You know,
or teachers.
I think that one of the things we underleverage is our network and how much people want to help us. And so when you have a network, when you have friends, when you're like, use them.
Right.
Like, call, ask for help, tell people what you want. There's always going to be someone who could be like, I can get you, maybe, I may not get you there, but I can get you closer.
I can open the door, right?
Yeah.
I can make an introduction. I'll, talk to this person.
Yeah.
And it was my major one. It was a very prominent firm here in Chicago, and I was a model maker. So I was I was in the back in the wood shop making models and stuff, right? I wasn't quite drafting yet, but that's how you work your way up,
Yeah.
right? You pay your dues there. And then I got to drafting, and I was like, I remember the sets were like this thick, right? We were working, one of the projects I was working on was a Chicago Board of Trade. And it was all
Hand drawn.
hand drawn. And then those corrections, it was mylar, vellum on top of the mylar, and you tape that, and then you do blueprints. And so I would run blueprints, and that ammonia smell, like I could smell it. Right? Like it was like fresh. It was so cool to see the blueprint, like how you make the copies
Yeah.
and stuff, and
Yeah.
inform everybody, the whole team, on how to be building
How
it.
to do it. Yeah.
And then going to the job site, right? Like really opening up yourself to those kinds of experiences. I remember being at a catwalk. We were at the Chicago Board Trade, at the catwalk that was, I don't know,
What's
like
a catwalk?
it's this narrow walkway up very high up in the ceiling, so that if there ever needs to be anything replaced up there, there's somewhere
There's
to walk,
stand and
to
walk. Okay.
stand, because ladders won't get that high.
Does every building have one of those?
No.
No, okay.
No, this one in particular did, because it was a high ceiling. It was like 6, 8 stories high on the inside, so it was an open space. And just looking-
Maria just thinking about that. Like, no, thank
It
you.
was so cool. You're like up there and stuff, looking at how the pieces get to put together, and you see it on the drawing, and then you see it there, and you start to make those connections, right? Because back then we were drawing a lot in 2D, two dimensions.
Yeah. Not like now where it's just like,
It's all
and they're like, and then
3D.
flip it, and
Yeah,
then
flip
like, this is what it looks like upside down.
If you want to change the orientation,
Yeah.
it's so different. But that gave me my first experience, right? And to like put it on my resume. And I was working on campus because I needed to work on campus too for work studies to pay for some of the tuition, and then in studio for, I don't know, 12 hours, 15-hour days, and we would sleep on the sofa, sleep under our tables. You couldn't move the drawings. My mom would say, come home for the weekend. I can't move it. My model is there. I can't move it. Wonderful experience from there. Went on to continue my professional work. Upon graduation, I had already an internship set up, and it was my first job was with my first full-time job, I should say, was with another Latina architect that is now, has done amazing buildings here in Chicago, and still keep in touch with her, and she has been an amazing mentor. Gave me the opportunity to start there and to start.
I love that.
To
I love
start.
that. Lift as you climb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was already out of school. Maybe I was so busy doing Chicago public school projects and CHA projects and managing multiple projects at the same time, getting field experience, You know, it was one of those things because we were so small, the office was small. It was like you just got thrown out
Yeah,
there
you get to
and
do, and you touched everything.
figure it out,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And having her support on just navigating this new field. You know, because you see it on paper one way, and then you're out in the field and you have the contractors like asking you, well, what do we put here? And you've seen the piece, but you don't know what it's called. And you're like, I'm going to get back to you. Issue an RFI, you know, to gain some time so that you can go and do some research on whatever it is
Yeah.
that we need
What's
to
an
do.
RFI?
A request for information
Oh,
that
okay.
contractors will send to architects when they want clarification.
Gotcha.
And then you want to keep that paper trail because if they don't put that, then you can go back and say, well, you asked for it. We said this, you put something else. Now you got to fix it. Right? Paper trail, project management 101, paper trail of everything. Um, and I was immensely busy. I loved it. And I had always wanted to go to graduate school. At this point, I had already been teaching also some high school bridge programs at IIT. So for the high school students that are interested in pursuing a career in architecture, I would lead the summer program there at IIT. So it was a summer program. We would get students from all over the country, and it was an immersive experience of everything about
Like
architecture.
a real architect.
Yes.
Yeah.
History and drawing and drafting and model making all in like 3 week span,
Yep.
right? Um, and so we we were doing that, but I wanted to teach at a college level as well. That was something that I wanted to do. So the dean there at IIT said, "Well, you need to get
Go
your
to grad
master's,
school.
go to grad school, go to grad school." So
But she didn't pick just any grad school. That's not Araceli.
no, because at this point I'm like, well, if I'm gonna go to grad school, I gotta make it count.
Yeah.
I gotta make it count.
We're only going one time.
Yeah, we're only going one time, and not not to knock down any other schools, but it's got to be a top school for architecture. So what are those top schools, right?
Yeah.
Harvard, Columbia are always competing for that number one spot in architecture. Cornell, Syracuse, UPenn, Yale. And so I went off and started applying everywhere, right? And it's a lot of work because you got letters of
Oh, yeah.
recommendation,
Your essays, you gotta do-
paper
yeah.
portfolio back then.
Oh.
All right. And it was 8.5 by 11, and every school had their own parameters because they don't want you to submit the same thing that you submitted to the other school.
Oh, wow. So it's interesting. I was helping an architect find a job. And I remember like we had to like put on his resume all these digital links to all of his portfolios and the works that have actually been created.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, this is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It was a lot of work.
And I can't imagine doing it in paper. Like this was
Oh,
so
this was
this
it
was
was
like
digital.
yeah, this was like a PDF of this and a link to his portfolio. And I was
Yeah.
just like, whoa.
Yes, and getting, I had big models, and now I had to take pictures and little and this and that. So was very applied everywhere to the top schools and got into Columbia, got into Cornell, got into Syracuse.
So you were going to New York no matter
I
what.
was going East Coast, right? That's where it was calling me. And Columbia was the one that offered me a scholarship, basically.
You're like, and the winner is, thank you very much.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a huge endeavor to take on graduate school, but it's a huge financial endeavor as well.
It is.
It's not an easy ticket.
I would say I think I paid off my student loans like maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I haven't been in school for 16 years.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still, close.
Yeah.
Oh, very close. But
Mine
you
was
still
not an
carry
Ivy
those.
League.
Yes. Yes. So Columbia. Go there. New York City. It is busy. I don't know anybody. I don't have family in New York. I pack up my car with whatever could fit, and drove out east.
You're like, here we go.
And here we go. Find an apartment. Finding an apartment in New York City, Manhattan.
Oh.
That is something else. Found an apartment. I think I showed up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then the doorman is like, "Oh, you can't move right now." I said, "But my car, it's full of my stuff." It's like, "Oh, we have moving hours." And I was like,
Help me.
"Please,
I'm so tired.
I'm so tired. I just drove 16 hours. You gotta help me." He's like, "Okay, but do it quietly." And I was like, "Okay, I'll unload,
Yeah.
and then I'll take it, do like 1 or 2 elevator rides and stuff." And there it was, my first apartment.
How big was it?
It was a 2 bedroom. I had a roommate who I had
Okay.
never met, right across from Columbia, and it was still smaller than usual, but it's old building. It's a pre-war building, so very very unique,
Yeah.
very unique spaces, very tight spaces. But I didn't spend much time there because all my time was
Was at
usually
school.
at school at Columbia. But very quickly, I realized that it was a very affluent, it's a very affluent school.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very affluent school. And
I
again,
want to ask you though, you researched top architectural schools?
yes.
Okay, because I think a lot of times, and I was in this camp of like, I don't even know what schools are out there. And sometimes I hear people name schools and they're like, oh, that's a good school. I'm like, never heard of it. How did you research it?
How did I research it? That's a good one. I think, well, through undergraduate school, you start to learn what are the programs out there that are significant,
Yeah.
especially in architecture. I think architecture is a field that it comes of privilege, right? Um, and in my undergraduate program, right, Latinos were very few of us. And as you attain higher education, that number even decreases sharply.
Yeah.
I think at Columbia, in my program of 80 students, there were 5 Latinos, and I was the only Latina among the 5.
Were there
right?
other women?
There were other women, just not
Yeah.
Latinas,
I
right?
would just imagine like the Latins are underrepresented and women are underrepresented, and you were like unique, the only one.
In there. However, I must say that for any educational program, I think the school, it's 50-50. There are a lot of women in school studying architecture. It's just when you leave the school, it declines sharply because the opportunities are not very favorable for women. And
What does
the
that mean?
demands for it. Well, when you get out of school in architecture, you work long hours. It's a given. You got to pay your dues. And I think it's changing nowadays, but when I first graduated in the early 2000s, it's like 12-hour days were the norm.
Yeah.
You walk in at 8, 9, and you're there till 8, 9. It was not unheard of.
Right.
And I think as women start to form families,
Yeah, that 12-hour day is hard.
it's hard. You're not gonna, you can't.
When you graduated Columbia, which by the way, congratulations. Is that when you started your own firm?
No, because I decided to stay so I graduated Columbia with a master's in advanced architectural design, right? And then while there, I'm always trying to figure out how do you build? You don't just build, right? So
2x4s, a couple nails,
a couple
vámonos.
nails, we'll make it work. But the business of building.
Yeah.
And while there, I was taking some electives in the program in business school, and then also in real estate development. So in the spring semester, I started to think, okay, what am I going to do because either I go to B school and learn about the business, general business, or I do a focused real estate development degree. And that's what I had decided. So I said, I'm already not working. I might as well continue. I'm already in student mode.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to take
This
the
time off. You're never going to do it again.
to
Yeah.
just pursue another graduate degree. So I graduated at Columbia with a master's in advanced architectural design and a master's in real estate development. So I have 2 masters from Columbia University. Yes. And I decided to stay there. You know, I'm already in New York City. It's like, might as well, right? That's one of the cities that is
Has
constantly
opportunity, building.
Yes,
Yep.
constantly building. But it wasn't easy to get my first job there. It was tough because now everybody wants an Ivy League grad on their team. So now I'm not only competing for the Columbia, but I'm competing with Cornell grads, Harvard grads, UPenn grads, right? Yale, everybody. And it was hard. It was hard. And then I didn't have my network. I didn't have my professional network set up there either. And so started to attend different events, Latino-oriented events, started to plug in, trying to, I remember I went to the career center there at Columbia, and they're, oh, you got this. You got the experience. This is great.
Yeah.
I probably sent out resumes to like 50 places. And I was losing hope. Like, this was the first time that I felt like,
oh my God.
what did I do?
Oh no.
Oh no, what did I do? You know, I needed to be working in real estate development somehow, some way. And finally, like, just that slight moment where you think, this is it.
Ya se acabó.
Ya se acabó. Ya no tengo dinero. I gotta go back home. I'm
Done.
wiped out.
Yeah.
That's it. That's when the opportunity started to come. Right? Like, last minute. And at this point I was tired, I was strained, I was financially, tight. And so got a corporate job with Cushman and Wakefield. Cushman and Wakefield is a global real estate conglomerate pretty much, and started to take on that path and understanding more on the business of building.
That's amazing. When did you start your firm?
I started my firm late 2020.
Okay.
So many years after.
And you are female owned, Latina owned, all those things. What made you want to start your own thing?
To have more control of the process and the types of projects that I want to do. I've been in this field already for 25 years, and I've worked on multi-million-dollar projects, beautiful high-end projects, and I've worked on affordable housing projects. And what I have realized is that how the investments are created, how they're done, where they're focused. And I think it's time. It's time for our communities to have good design. Why do we have to go to the north side, to that special restaurant, to that special place?
Right.
And I want to have an impact in my own community in developing those projects. And I'm working on that. It hasn't been easy at all.
We're getting there. I remember last September when we were trying to plan a girls' weekend, you were at a conference, and it was like a Latina architecture.
It's a women's leadership summit, yes, hosted by the AIA. The AIA is the American Institute of Architects, and it's the organization that holds all the architects throughout the country, right? Everybody, that's the organization to be in, to be a part in. But they started to create these women-focused
I love that because I think
conferences.
sometimes we feel like we're alone.
Oh,
And then you
absolutely.
like so when you're in business or when you're running your own business or if you're in a field that is so male dominated, like it's very hard sometimes to look and find someone who looks like you.
Right.
And so I love that they're doing that.
Yes, yes, especially at a national level, absolutely.
I hate that it takes you away when I'm always like, hey, what if we go away this weekend? And you're like, nope.
Can't do it. I because it's important to me also to like really connect with other women who understand
Yeah.
just the challenges. Not that any other woman wouldn't, but in this field, it is very different. And the more years, the higher titles that you get, it just becomes very
Right. Right. And as you go, like year over year, you start seeing the same people,
right.
you start building those
Yes.
relationships, and you create that network.
Yes. And I love that this network is truly across the country,
Yeah.
right? And so it's awesome to hear other stories, other challenges, other solutions, and just to network and to be among other amazing women too,
Yeah.
and what they've done. To hear from them, some of the keynote speakers just come to mind. I'm like, oh wow, okay, that didn't just happen to me, you know.
Yeah. No, we find like energy in knowing that
Oh,
other people have gone through this or understand it or,
right.
know what it's like. Even if it was bad, at least we were both bad.
Right, right.
So I love talking to you. I love your experience. I love it. Araceli and I have the good luck, unbeknownst to us, to live on the same street. Not the same block, but the same street and not too far from each other. But we bonded over being Latina entrepreneurs. And when you find the group that motivates you and
Yes.
inspires you and like brings you together, it's really important to cultivate that. And if you look back, like you were talking about how coming out of Colombia, which you would think is like
It
your
was an easy
ticket, yeah, like
ticket.
here we go, hire
Yeah.
me, you still needed that network.
Yes.
And so I love that now through these professional associations, you're kind of finding that network of people who look like you and sound like you and have gone through everything that you went through.
Right. And now, I mean, what I'm creating is really a place, a firm, a company that will also empower other women that are interested in this field. There's not that many of us. Um, and that's what I'm striving to create is, to create other architects and other developers, so that the places that we live, that we enjoy, are created by us for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you can find Araceli on LinkedIn. She's Araceli Garza, and then you have all these letters next to your name. What does that mean?
Well, it's AIA, which is the American Institute of Architects. It's NCARB, the National Accreditation Board. So that allows me to practice architecture anywhere around the country except California and Florida, where I would need to take additional credentials. I am also a lead accredited professional, which is the leadership in environmental and energy design. So,
I
try to
always wondered what
lead.
that stood for.
Yeah, try to lead with sustainability, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's what we need to do now is to
Right.
really build responsibly, um,
100%.
and identify the best ways, the best practices to make buildings that are sustainable, reliant, and that will test the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, timeless.
So you barely drink it because we've been talking so good, so well. But how do you take your cafecito?
I take it with some cream. Yeah, café con leche.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Feel free to reach out. She's an amazing resource for our community, and we're so immensely proud to count you as
Yes.
one of our own. So felicidades.
Yeah.
And join us next time on Corporate Cafecito.